The bus shuddered to a stop, brakes hissing like a wounded beast. A veil of fog clung to the road as Elijah stepped down, boots sinking slightly into the damp gravel. His coat, black and worn at the edges, flapped against the wind, which carried with it the scent of something old: mildew, earth, and a faint copper tang. Ravencroft was exactly as the letter had described, forgotten by time. Crooked houses leaned toward each other as though conspiring. Windows, either broken or shrouded by heavy drapes, stared like hollow eyes. The street lamps flickered, their light barely penetrating the gloom. Elijah adjusted the leather satchel, slung over his shoulder, feeling the weight of the letter inside. No sender, just a message scrawled in a shaky hand. Find the hollow. Beneath it lies the truth of what was taken. He'd researched the town as much as possible. Sparse information. A mining settlement in the late 1800s. Then a sharp decline after a fire gutted the old chapel in 1924. Since then, Ravencroft had become a ghost clinging to life. A voice broke his focus. You shouldn't be here, stranger, rasped an old man sitting by the bus stop. His skin looked paper thin, and his eyes were to cloudy marbles. The hollow, it don't give back what it takes. Elijah crouched to the man's level, producing the letter. Do you know who sent this? The man didn't look at it. His gaze drifted toward the forest line in the distance, where the fog was thickest. You hear him yet? No, you will. They start whispering around sundown. As if to punctuate the warning, a distant sound echoed through the air, a low, rhythmic thud. It could have been a hammer or a heartbeat. Elijah straightened. Where is the hollow? The old man shook his head, mumbling, Follow the crows. They always know where the rod is. A sudden flurry of wings made Elijah glance up. Indeed, a line of black crows circled in the sky before darting off toward the western hills. Clutching his satchel tighter, Elijah stepped onto the cracked main road. The fog seemed to thicken behind him, as though sealing his way back. Somewhere, in the distance, a church bell tolled once, then fell silent. But when he checked the crumbling chapel steeple, the bell was long gone. The road to the western hills twisted like a serpent, flanked by gnarled trees whose branches clawed at the sky. The further Elijah walked, the quieter Ravencroft became. No dogs barking, no idle chatter, not even the chirp of birds, only the crunch of gravel beneath his boots and the distant flutter of crow wings. The fog grew thicker with every step, curling around his legs like ghostly fingers. His breath came out in soft plumes, though the air wasn't particularly cold. It was heavy, oppressive. Ahead, the path split. To the right, an overgrown trail curved toward the forest. To the left, a derelict sign hung crookedly from one hinge, its faded letters barely legible. Hollow Manor, private property, keep out. He checked the crows. They circled above the left path. Elijah muttered under his breath, figures, as he made his way toward Hollow Manor. A sudden, piercing noise froze him in place. Whispers. They came from the fog itself, disembodied, shapeless. Dozens of voices overlapping in an incomprehensible murmur. Male, female, old, young, layered upon one another like a chorus of the dead. Turn back. Too late. You were warned. The roots remember. Elijah gritted his teeth and pressed forward, but the whispers followed. Louder now, closer. The trees lining the road seemed to bend toward him, their trunks split with deep scars. Some bore marking symbols etched deep into the bark, circles within circles, interwoven triangles, and a single word, carved repeatedly. Beneath, lightning split the sky. No thunder followed, just that hollow, vibrating silence. Then he saw it. Through the thinning fog emerged the silhouette of Hollow Manor, a monstrous structure of rotting wood and crumbling stone. The roof sagged under the weight of decades of neglect. Windows were either shattered or covered in boards, some hanging loose as if torn from within. Ivy strangled the walls, and a pair of rusted gates stood half open, as though inviting him or daring him to enter. A flicker of movement caught his eye. In one of the upstairs windows, the shadow of a figure passed by, tall, thin, too thin. Elijah instinctively reached for the flashlight in his satchel. The beam was weak, flickering, but it was enough to cut a narrow line through the fog. As he approached the gate, something crunched underfoot, Bones, small, dozens of them birds, perhaps, but some were longer, thinner. His pulse quickened. He pushed the gate, which groaned as though protesting, and stepped onto the path leading to the front door. Then a sound behind him. Footsteps. He spun around. Nothing. Then from the corner of his vision, a figure darted between the trees, pale, barefoot. It moved on all fours, faster than it should have. Elijah aimed his flashlight toward the forest line, scanning there. Another figure, upright this time, a woman in a long, black dress, her face obscured by a veil. "Hello?" Elijah called, his voice wavering despite himself. "Do you live here?" No answer. The woman tilted her head slowly, unnaturally, as if studying him. Then, without a sound, she turned and walked straight into the fog, vanishing as though the mist swallowed her whole. His throat tightened. Instinct told him to turn back, but curiosity, no. Something deeper than curiosity drove him. A need, a compulsion. He turned back to the front door. It was open, wide open. Even though it hadn't been seconds before, a faint smell drifted out, a mixture of damp wood, mold, and something else, something metallic. Elijah stepped inside. Behind him, the gate slowly creaked shut on its own. And the whispers, they didn't stop, they grew louder. The door closed behind him with a resonant thud, sealing Elijah inside Hollow Manor. Instantly, the air grew colder. The interior was suffocating, as though the house itself resented his presence. His flashlight beam shook slightly as he scanned the foyer. A grand staircase, splintered and sagging, loomed ahead. On either side stretched corridors swallowed in shadow. The wallpaper, once patterned with elegant vines, peeled in long, curling strips, revealing damp, mold-stained wood beneath. Faded portraits lined the walls, faces blurred by water damage, or, disturbingly, by deliberate scratches over the eyes and mouths. The smell was stronger here, iron, rot, and something sweet, cloyingly sweet. As Elijah stepped deeper inside, the floorboards creaked, but not in rhythm with his footsteps. There were other creaks, from upstairs, from the hallway, from behind. He paused at a door to his left, half-rotted but slightly ajar. With a cautious push, it opened fully, revealing what might have once been a study. A massive oak desk dominated the room, its surface cluttered with brittle papers, broken picture frames, and melted candle stubs. Bookshelves sagged under the weight of old, leather-bound tomes, many swollen with moisture. Some had titles in languages he couldn't recognize, symbols that twisted if he stared too long. On the far wall, a corkboard stood, covered in yellowed newspaper clippings pinned haphazardly. Elijah's breath caught as he stepped closer. Every article was about a missing person, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Each clipping bore the same grim photo, a headshot beneath headlines like, "Local. Girl vanishes without a trace. Third disappearance this month. Ravencroft's growing mystery." Where are they going? No bodies, no witnesses, no answers. The dates spanned decades starting as far back as 1895, stretching all the way to 3 weeks ago. Pinned at the center was a black and white photo of a family, mother, father, 2 children standing. In front of Hollow Manor, scrawled across it in red ink, was a single word, "Taken." Elijah pulled a notebook from his satchel and began jotting down names, dates, and patterns. He noticed something strange. The dates clustered in intervals, every 7 years. A sharp spike in disappearances, then a lull, then it resumed, like a cycle. His pen paused. Ritualistic, he thought, or something pretending to be. A loud crash shattered his concentration. It came from upstairs, wood splintering, a dragging sound. Elijah tightened his grip on the flashlight and drew the small folding knife he always carried, more a comfort than a weapon. Slowly, he crept out of the study and toward the staircase. As he ascended, the air grew heavier, each breath harder to draw. Halfway up, his light caught on a door at the end of the upper hall, ajar, swaying as though recently disturbed. But then, movement. To his left, a figure scuttled across the hallway on all fours, disappearing into a side room. Pale skin, limbs thin as sticks, head too large for its body. Elijah nearly dropped the flashlight. No, not human, not anymore. Summoning what courage he had left, he approached the nearest door and pushed it open. A bedroom, moldy mattress, torn curtains, and a wall covered in photographs, some pinned, others stapled directly into the wood. All were portraits, Polaroids, or torn sections from old photo albums. Every face shared one thing in common. The eyes were scratched out dot in the center of the wall. One photo was newer, a child maybe 8 years old staring wide-eyed at the camera. Underneath, written in shaky ink, "I hear them in the floor." Elijah staggered back. Then a rhythmic knocking. Not at the door, not on the wall, from beneath the floorboards. Knock, 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 pause, knock, knock. It wasn't random, it was a pattern. Morse code. Elijah dropped to his knees, pressed his ear to the floor, and strained to hear. Faintly a whisper. "Help me." He scrambled back. "Who's there? Who are you?" No response, only silence. And then, slowly, deliberately, the knocking resumed. Elijah remained crouched on the moldy floorboards, every muscle tense. The knocking continued, methodical and SOS beneath his feet. Each tap reverberated up through the rotten wood, vibrating against his palms. "Help me, beneath, beneath." The whisper was softer now, as though retreating into deeper layers of the house. Elijah stood, eyes scanning the warped floorboards for any indication of a hatch, a loose plank, something. Nothing obvious. He pulled out a small pry bar from his satchel, a tool he always carried on investigations like this, and jammed it into the seam between the planks. With a groan of protest, the wood splintered, revealing a hollow space below. A wave of rancid air surged up, thick with the unmistakable scent of decay. Elijah gagged, pulling his scarf over his mouth and nose. He lowered the flashlight into the gap, a narrow passageway, dirt walls, roots breaking through the ceiling like skeletal fingers, and tracks dragged marks in the soil. Something, or someone, had been down there recently, swallowing the rising dread. Elijah widened the opening enough to squeeze through. The descent was tight, forcing him to crawl on hands and knees. His flashlight illuminated crude symbols carved into the dirt walls, spirals, runes, eyes. As he moved further, the tunnel opened into a larger chamber, and there, his blood turned to ice. Bones, piles of them, human and animal mixed together, tangled as if dumped carelessly over the years. Some were fresh flesh still clinging to the marrow, others bleached with age. Ribs jutted out like broken cages. Skulls grinned up from the dirt. But it wasn't just the bones. The walls were lined with shelves. Each shelf contained jars, dozens, maybe hundreds. Each jar was filled with something. Elijah stepped closer. Inside one jar floated a withered, shriveled human hand, fingers curled unnaturally. Another contained what appeared to be an eye, cloudy and staring. Some jars held indistinguishable fleshy masses, others, things that couldn't possibly belong to a human. Fetuses. No. Twisted shapes, deformed, wrong. In the center of the chamber, a wooden table stood, covered in yellowed papers, handwritten notes, and more photographs. Some papers were ledgers, lists of names with dates next to them. Others detailed ritual instructions. The offering must be bound in salt and ash. The sigil of root must be drawn beneath the skin. The whisperer accepts only that which is given freely or taken violently. Elijah's heart raced as he flipped through the documents. His hands trembled. This isn't just murder. This is something else, something older. Then a sudden noise, a voice, faint but clear, from the tunnel behind him. He's not supposed to be here, not yet. It knows. Footsteps, slithering from the tunnel, getting closer. Elijah snapped off his flashlight instinctively. Complete darkness swallowed him. His breathing became the loudest sound in the chamber. Something entered the tunnel, slow, deliberate, scraping against the dirt, a guttural growl, like breath through wet gravel. Then a whisper, inches from his ear, "Leave or stay forever." Without thinking, Elijah bolted. He stumbled toward the far end of the chamber, found another narrow exit, and crawled frantically through the twisting earth. The passage was tighter, the air thinner. Roots clawed at his clothes and skin. Finally, light. A broken vent at the surface let in thin beams of sunlight. Was it moonlight? He clawed his way upward, breaking through to the outside, gasping for air as he collapsed onto wet grass. When he rolled over, heart pounding, he realized he was behind Hollow Manor near an old well choked with vines. But he wasn't alone. Standing at the tree line, half shrouded in mist, was the woman in the black veil. Her head tilted slowly, her hands clasped in front of her. And though Elijah couldn't see her face, he knew somehow that she was smiling. Then, as silently as she appeared, she stepped backward into the fog and vanished. Elijah lay there, staring at the empty space, realizing the terrifying truths. This town had a long, organized history of ritualistic disappearances. Something, not entirely human, was involved. And worse, she was just scratching the surface. Elijah sat against the broken well, trying to steady his breath. His hands trembled not just from exhaustion, but from the crushing weight of realization. Ravencroft wasn't just hiding secrets, the entire town was built upon them. He pulled out his notebook, flipping to a clean page. His fingers hesitated before scribbling. The Hollow isn't just a name, it's literal. There are tunnels, chambers, something lives down there, something old. As he wrote, a sharp sting flared across his left forearm. He winced, pulling up his sleeve. His skin was marked. Thin, shallow cuts formed a shape, not random scratches from crawling. Deliberate, symmetrical, a spiral wrapped in a triangle, surrounded by 7 tiny lines like thorns. His breath caught. This wasn't here before. It burned, not like an infection, not pain of the body, deeper, as if the mark itself was burrowing into his nerves. His thoughts, the air around him shifted. A low hum, almost imperceptible, filled his ears, not sound exactly vibration. It felt like something beneath the ground, turning, stirring. His gaze snapped toward the woods. Something moved between the trees, tall, gaunt silhouettes gliding noiselessly, watching. The mark. They can see it, Elijah whispered to himself. He scrambled to his feet. His instinct screamed to run, but his mind battled with the overwhelming need to understand. Why him? Why now? Then his phone vibrated. A signal. Here. He yanked it out. One new message, no caller ID. Stop digging. The roots go deeper than you know. As he stared, the phone's screen flickered and died. Dead. Battery or something far worse. A sharp crack echoed from the manor behind him, wood splitting, glass shattering. Then, a sound that made his stomach knot. Sobbing. A child. Fragile, muffled, coming from the woods. Elijah's better judgment told him it was bait, a trap. Yet, the memory of the photograph flashed in his mind. The child with wide, terrified eyes. I hear them in the floor. Gritting his teeth, he stepped into the tree line. The forest here was denser than it should have been. Branches twisted unnaturally, bark warped with strange patterns. Some trees had symbols carved into them identical to the mark on his arm. The sobbing grew louder, leading him to a clearing. In the center stood an ancient stone structure, a circle of pillars, half sunken into the earth, cracked with age but still standing. Vines wrapped each pillar, but not chaotically. They formed symbols, as though grown with purpose. And at the center of the circle, an old wooden box sat atop a flat stone, not large enough to be a coffin. The sobbing stopped. Silence. Elijah stepped closer, heart pounding. He reached out, hands trembling, and slowly opened the box. Inside, not a child, a mask, porcelain, smooth and pale, with hollow eyes and no mouth. Intricate black symbols were painted across the surface. On the forehead, the same spiral and triangle symbol carved into his skin. Beneath it, a folded note, old paper, brittle, written in red ink, or was it ink at all? It read, "The face of the Hollow, wear it, and you may see. Refuse, and you will remain blind." A sound behind him, twigs snapping. Elijah spun, flashlight trembling. Nothing. Then the wind shifted. Whispers everywhere. Wear it. See, it's the only way. They already marked you. You are part of the route now. He looked back at the mask. His hands shook. If I put it on, what will I see? The whisper answered, as if inside his skull. The truth. Slowly, reluctantly, Elijah lifted the mask toward his face. As it touched his skin, a scream, not his, not human, echoing from somewhere beneath the earth. His vision blurred. The forest around him twisted, the trees bending, the ground seeming to breathe. The world fractured. And when the mask sealed over his face, everything changed. The instant the mask sealed over Elijah's face, the world ruptured. His vision blurred, colors inverted, and the forest around him seemed to ripple as if reality itself were a thin veil stretched over. Something monstrous beneath, where trees once stood, now rose twisting pillars of flesh and bone, roots pulsing like arteries, leaking a dark ichor that seeped into the ground. The mask didn't block his vision, it changed it. He stumbled back, gasping, clutching at the porcelain edges that now felt fused to his skin. His breath echoed inside the hollow space, each inhale amplified, distorted. Then he saw them. Figures, dozens, no, hundreds. They lined the edges of the forest clearing, partially hidden in the folds of space that, moments before, had appeared empty. The veiled ones, tall, gaunt silhouettes, skin stretched impossibly tight over angular bones. Hollow eye sockets stared from behind torn veils. Their mouths were sewn shut, yet whispers radiated from them, not through sound, but through the vibration of the very air. Their hands were long, ending in fingers that splintered into root-like tendrils. As Elijah turned his head, they shifted, in perfect synchrony like marionettes controlled by a singular, unseen hand. Then, beyond them, deeper into the corrupted vision, he saw something far worse. A tree. No, the tree, colossal. Its trunk was split open like a festering wound, and from within spilled thousands of black, writhing tendrils. Faces half-formed, melting, screaming, were embedded in its bark, trapped in eternal agony. Its roots stretched endlessly into the earth, pulsing, feeding. And in its center, where a heart should be, was a vast, circular void. A hollow. An endless mouth. From that darkness, the same voice he had heard in the tunnels now echoed, not through ears, but directly into his mind. You wear the face. You see the root. You are bound now. Elijah staggered, clutching his head. No, this isn't real. This can't be real. But the mask didn't lie. It never lied. As his vision adjusted further, new shapes revealed themselves. The ground beneath Ravencroft was a network of roots, not tree roots, not plant life, living tunnels, pulsing organs of something vast and sentient. Every house, every street, every building, all constructed atop this grotesque organism. And the people, his breath hitched. They were part of it. Some walked the surface, oblivious. Others bore faint, flickering symbols beneath their skin marks like his own. And a few, a horrifying few, were hollow themselves, empty husks in the shape of people. Souls long devoured, bodies merely puppets for the roots beneath. How deep does this go? The voice responded, as though reading his thought. Deeper than death, deeper than memory. The first stone of Ravencroft was placed upon the hollow. The pact was made. The cycle must continue. Suddenly, a sharp tug at his shoulder. Elijah ripped off the mask, gasping for air as the real world snapped back. The forest looked normal again, trees, grass, fog. But someone stood over him. A woman, not the veiled figure. Someone else, human. She was young, mid-30s maybe, dressed in hiking gear stained with mud and torn fabric. Her eyes were wild but lucid. You shouldn't be here, she hissed, glancing around as if expecting something to emerge from the fog. It saw you, didn't it? You wore the mask. Who are you? Elijah stammered. She knelt, grabbed his arm, and shoved back his sleeve. Her face paled when she saw the mark. Damn it, you're marked now, like me, like you. She nodded grimly. My name's Mara. I've been hiding from it for 5 years. Everyone else gave in. You, me, we're not supposed to exist anymore. But we do. Her grip tightened. And if you want to survive, if you want answers, you're going to have to follow me. Elijah stared into her hollowed, terrified eyes, and behind her, deep in the fog, something large and slow began moving. Something coming. Mara dragged Elijah by the arm through the fog-drenched forest, moving fast but with the precision of someone who knew exactly where every hidden path was. Roots snagged their feet, branches clawed at their faces, but neither slowed. Behind them, the sound of something massive breathing echoed deep, rhythmic, and wet, as though the very forest inhaled and exhaled in pursuit. We need cover. Mara snapped. It's awake now. They broke through the tree line into a ravine, descending quickly toward a narrow crevice hidden behind a curtain of ivy. Without hesitation, Mara shoved Elijah through, squeezing in after him. The sounds of the forest shifted, muted, as if the world outside had been sealed away. Inside, a dim lantern flickered, casting a weak glow over a cramped space lined with stone walls. The floor was packed dirt, the air thick with dust, mildew, and something else, the faint, coppery scent of dried blood. A makeshift camp, crates of supplies, books, maps, photographs pinned to the walls. Mara pulled the ivy back over the entrance, then collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. We should be safer for now. Elijah swallowed the rising panic. What the hell was that thing out there? Mara didn't answer. Right away, she walked to a table littered with old papers, lifted one, and shoved it into his hands. A hand-drawn map of Ravencroft. But not the streets, not the buildings, the tunnels, the routes. The hollow, red lines marked certain paths. Black X's indicated blocked or collapsed sections. Circled in dark ink was a location labeled only as the Heart. Mara pointed. It's not just under Hollow Manor, it's under everything. The whole town is built on a living network. A thing. She rifled through a stack of documents and retrieved an old, brittle page. It was a contract, signed in blood, dated October 31st, 1849. We, the founders of Ravencroft, do hereby enter into sacred covenant with the Whisperer beneath, in exchange for prosperity, protection from plague and famine, and the veil of obscurity from the outside world. We shall offer that which nourishes the root, the hallowed. At the bottom were 5 names. Elijah recognized it instantly from the newspaper clippings in the Manor families, who had lived in Ravencroft for generations. It's a pact, Mara said bitterly. They made a deal with something they didn't understand. Or maybe they did. Either way, every 7 years, the town feeds it. Feeds what? The Whisperer? Elijah asked, dread knotting his stomach. Mara nodded slowly. It's not a god, not a demon. It's older, something beneath reality. It doesn't just take bodies. It takes memories, souls, identity. Those people, the ones who go missing, they don't die. They're erased, forgotten, like they never existed. Elijah's pulse quickened. But why doesn't anyone stop it? Why do the others accept this? Because if you resist, it doesn't just take you, Mara said. It takes your family, your bloodline, every record of you. Erased, gone, and the others, they pretend it never happened. Because to them, it didn't. She grabbed his marked forearm. That mark, it means it sees you now. It won't forget you. You've been chosen. Chosen for what? She hesitated, eyes darkening, either to feed the root or to serve it. The lantern flickered. Both of them froze. From the tunnel beyond the ivy, a familiar sound echoed. Knocking. Rhythmic, deliberate. From beneath the earth. Knock. 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 Pause. Knock. Knock. A chill crawled up Elijah's spine. It's the same pattern. From the manor. From under the floor. Mara nodded grimly. It's how it talks, to those who are marked. Then, softly, the knocking turned into words, whispered from the dirt itself, from the stones, from the bones buried in the earth. Come to the heart. Beneath, beneath, beneath. Mara grabbed a backpack, shoving supplies inside. This isn't random. It marked you for a reason. You were brought here. Brought here? Elijah repeated. You think you found that letter by accident? Her voice trembled with suppressed fear. It's been calling you since before. You knew it existed. Elijah stared at the map, at the ominous circled point labeled the heart. The whisper came again, closer now. See what lies beneath. Mara zipped the backpack shut. If we go there, we may find the truth. She met his eyes, or we never come back. Asterisk. The fog outside thickened as if the forest itself conspired to trap them. Every footstep Elijah and Mara took along the crooked path was swallowed by an unnatural silence, one that didn't simply muffle sound, but devoured it entirely. The deeper they ventured toward the marked location on Mara's map, the more the forest warped. Trees grew unnaturally tall, their trunks twisted into grotesque shapes, some appearing vaguely humanoid. If stared at too long, branches tangled overhead like prison bars, blocking out the sky. Elijah broke the silence. Who's the woman in black? Mara stiffened, her grip tightening on the machete strapped to her thigh. You've seen her. She's followed me. Or, appeared to me. I can't tell if she's real, Bo. She's real, Mara whispered. But she's not alive, not anymore. They reached a clearing, the same one Elijah remembered from when he first saw the mask. But now, in the center, stood something new. A figure. The woman in black. A long, flowing gown of velvet so dark it seemed to absorb light. Her veil shimmered in the fog. Made not of fabric, but of thousands of tiny, writhing threads, hair, perhaps, or roots. Her head tilted slowly as she turned toward them. Though her face remained hidden behind the veil, Mara hissed, "Stay still. Don't speak until she does." The woman took a single step forward. The ground beneath her feet cracked, not like footsteps on leaves, but like ice splintering under unbearable weight. Then her voice, a layered whisper of many voices merged into one. Male, female, child, elder, echoes woven together. The marked have come. Elijah opened his mouth, but Mara's hand clamped over his arm, squeezing hard. The woman continued, "You seek what was buried, what was promised, but promises made. Beneath ash are paid in bone." A soft rustling from the forest edge. Elijah glanced over dozens of shapes gathering, shadow figures with hollow eyes, faceless yet staring, watching. Mara finally stepped forward, defiant but trembling. "We seek the heart. We demand answers." The woman tilted her head in a slow, unnatural angle. "Few demand, fewer survive." She raised a hand, long fingers, unnaturally thin, skin stretched tight over blackened bone. Her palm opened, revealing a symbol burned into the flesh, the same mark burned beneath Elijah's skin. Then her voice softened, almost mournful. "I was like you once, flesh, bone, name." But the whisperer does not give without taking. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of rot and old earth. "You follow roots that lead only downward," she continued. "But beware, some truths cannot be carried back to the surface. Some truths hollow you from within." Mara swallowed. "Then show us, or get out of our way." For a long, suffocating moment, the woman said nothing. Then she turned. Her body seemed to dissolve into the mist, leaving behind a trail of black threads that floated like smoke. Where she stood, the earth split open, a hole, a staircase carved into the dirt and stone, spiraling down into absolute darkness. From below, a cold wind rose, carrying a sound that Elijah would never forget. Not voices, not screams. Breathing. Deep, endless, the breathing of something colossal, something waiting. The shadows whispered. Beneath. Mara adjusted her backpack, lit a fresh lantern, and without looking back, stepped onto the staircase. "Let's go," she said quietly. "This is the only way." Elijah hesitated at the threshold. The air itself resisted him, like walking into water. His legs trembled, but curiosity was no longer the only thing driving him. He had to know. With one last glance at the fading figure of the woman in black dissolving into the trees, Elijah stepped into the hollow beneath Ravencroft, and the staircase swallowed him whole. The descent felt endless. Elijah and Mara moved down the spiral staircase, their lantern light barely pushing back the oppressive dark. The air grew colder with each step, the walls damp and slick with moisture or something thicker. The stone passageway narrowed until they had to walk single file. The walls bore carvings now etched with trembling, uneven hands, symbols of the root, the spiral, the triangle, names written over and over, then scratched out, almost violently. As they reached the base of the stairs, the tunnel opened into a small chamber. The floor was littered with broken pottery, rusted tools, and bones, some cracked open, as though marrow had been sucked out. At the center lay a wooden chest, half buried in dirt. Mara knelt, prying it open with her knife. Inside, a diary. Old, its leather cover flaking at the edges. The name burned onto the front in block letters, Silas Crane. Elijah felt a shiver ripple through him. That name, he'd seen it on the Founder's Pact, one of the original signatories. The man who helped create the curse Ravencroft lived under. Mara opened the book carefully. The pages crackled with age. The handwriting inside was jagged, frantic, like each word had been written in fear. She began to read aloud. Entry, October 4th, 1849. The earth below Ravencroft breathes. I've heard it for months now, every night the slow inhale, the the wet exhale. At first, we believed it was water shifting in the caverns. Then the voices began. Entry, October 10th, 1849. We gathered by lantern light. Myself, Abernathy, Doyle, Miriam, and Holt. The soil beneath the manor was soft, eager to be moved. We dug until the lanterns flickered. Then we found it, the root, and the hollow. Entry, October 17th, 1849. It spoke, not with words, with thoughts, images, promises. It showed us fields rich with crops, homes unspoiled by disease, families untouched by grief. All it asked for was what it hungered for most. Entry, October 21st, 1849. We made the pact, signed in blood, bound by earth. Every 7 years it would be fed, one by one, at first, then more, as needed. The town will flourish, it said. But the price, God forgive me, the price. Entry, October 31st, 1849. I buried the diary. Here, in the roots where it can't hear my thoughts. The others, they've changed. Eyes black when they think no one's looking. Smiles too wide. They're not them anymore. Maybe I'm not, either. If you find this, leave Ravencroft. Burn it to the ground if you can. Whatever happens, never go to the heart. Never seek the center. Mara closed the book, her hands shaking. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. Elijah finally broke the silence. We're going to the heart, aren't we? Mara's eyes filled with reluctant determination. We don't have a choice anymore. Suddenly, the earth trembled beneath their feet. Dust rained from the ceiling. A deep, low rumble echoed from the passage ahead like something massive shifting below the surface. Then, from behind them, footsteps. Not theirs. Slow, uneven. Elijah turned toward the staircase. A figure stood there now. Thin, emaciated, skin paper pale, and stretched tight across its skull. The eyes, gone. Hollow pits leaking black. ICHOR. Mara whispered, Silas. The thing that had once been Silas Crane opened its mouth wider than human anatomy should allow. And from the depths of its ruined throat came not words, but the same familiar whisper. Beneath, beneath, beneath. Without hesitation, Mara grabbed Elijah's arm and pulled him down the next tunnel. Deeper still. Behind them, the thing followed, its footsteps slow, but relentless, and ahead, only more darkness, and the promise of the heart. The tunnel twisted. Downward, the air growing thicker and heavier with every step. Elijah's lungs burned, and the dim lantern light flickered wildly against the slick stone walls. Roots crawled over everything, creeping, pulsing like veins in the earth. Behind them, the shuffling footsteps of the thing called Silas echoed, relentless and unyielding. The narrow passage abruptly opened into a cavernous chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow. At its center stood a monstrous gaping maw, a vast, tooth-lined hole in the earth, pulsating and dripping with dark. ICHOR. This was the heart. The roots of the entire town converged here, twisting into jagged tendrils that reached, like fingers, toward the cavern's depths. Mara's voice was a harsh whisper. This is where it all began, and where it will end. Elijah's eyes were drawn to the cavern floor. There, carved deep into stone, was a great spiral surrounded by sharp triangles. The same symbol seared into his skin. The mask, the trees, and even Silas himself. As he stepped closer, the ground trembled. A voice, ancient, cold, and terrible, reverberated through the chamber. The offering has come. The cycle turns anew. From the shadows, figures emerged, villagers marked by the same symbol, their eyes glazed, movements jerky and unnatural. They formed a circle around the cavern, chanting softly in a language Elijah could not understand. Mara grabbed his arm. We must stop the offering, or the hollow will consume us all. Suddenly, from the dark maw, something stirred, a low, guttural growl. Then a rising wave of sound that filled Elijah's mind with unbearable pain. He clenched his jaw, trying to block out the overwhelming noise. Mara began to chant back, her voice steady and fierce. The ground shook violently, roots burst from the walls, writhing toward the villagers, but Mara's chant pushed them back like fire. Elijah realized the hollow wasn't just a beast, it was a prison, a tomb for the souls stolen through the centuries. He looked at Mara, determination blazing in his eyes. Let's end this, together. They stepped toward the gaping mouth of the hollow, ready to confront the ancient darkness that had bound Ravencroft in its terrible grasp. The cavern pulsated like a beating heart, shadows stretching and twisting with every chant Mara uttered. The villagers circled the gaping maw, their faces blank, eyes voids of life. Their skin shimmered faintly with the same spiral triangle mark burned into Elijah's flesh. Roots surged from the walls, thick and sinewy, writhing as if alive. Some lashed toward Mara and Elijah like serpents, but Mara's incantations created a shimmering barrier of light that held them at bay. Elijah's breath was ragged, his skin prickled with cold sweat. The mask still clutched in his hand seemed to throb with a dark energy. A sudden, guttural roar erupted from the depths of the hollow, shaking the chamber. The maw widened, revealing rows of jagged teeth made not of bone, but of twisted wood and stone. From within, tendrils lashed out, seeking, grasping. Mara's voice rose, fierce and commanding. "You will not take us," the roots writhed violently, retreating momentarily. But then a figure stepped forward from the crowd, a man, tall and gaunt, his eyes glowing with unnatural light. "Elijah," he hissed, "you carry the mark. The root calls to you." Elijah stared, heart hammering. The man's face was familiar. No, it was Silas, but corrupted beyond recognition. His body pulsed with dark veins, roots snaking beneath his skin like a living web. "The pact," Silas whispered, "binds us all. You can either join us or be consumed." Elijah shook his head, stepping back. "I'm not your servant." With a terrible speed, Silas lunged. Roots exploded from the ground, wrapping around Elijah's legs, pulling him toward the maw. Mara screamed, pushing her hands forward, unleashing a blinding flash of light that severed the roots. Elijah ripped off his jacket, wrapping it tightly around his forearm, pressing hard against the burning mark. He realized the key wasn't to resist the root, but to embrace and control it. With trembling hands, he pressed the mask to his face once more. The world shifted again through the eyes of the hollow. He saw the root's memories, its pain, its hunger. He reached into the darkness within himself and grasped the core, the beating heart of the hollow. The chamber trembled violently as Elijah's newfound will battled the ancient power. Silas screamed, a sound like splintering wood, and the villagers faltered, their trance broken. Mara rushed forward, seizing Elijah's hand. "Hold on, you're the root's tether now." Together they channeled the pulsing energy, turning the maw's hunger back upon itself. The cavern shook one final time before falling eerily silent. Elijah pulled off the mask, gasping. The villagers blinked, their eyes clearing, faces returning to normal. The maw sealed slowly, the roots retreating into the earth. Outside, the first rays of dawn pierced the mist. Ravencroft was silent, no longer hollow. But Elijah knew this victory was only the beginning. Dawn's pale light filtered through the broken canopy above, casting long shadows over the sealed mouth of the hollow. The oppressive weight that had hung over Ravencroft for centuries seemed to lift. Yet Elijah felt no relief. Instead, a hollow ache settled deep within him, as if something vital had been lost or stolen. Mara sat silently, her eyes scanning the now quiet forest, but Elijah's gaze kept drifting back to his forearm. The mark was still there, faintly glowing beneath the skin, a reminder that the hollow's touch lingered. "You did it," Mara said quietly, breaking the silence. "You stopped the cycle." Elijah shook his head. "We delayed it, maybe, but the mark, it's still here. I can feel it." She sighed, standing. "The root is patient. It waits. It remembers." Elijah glanced toward the town. The streets looked empty, almost too still. He knew the truth Mara was afraid to say. "Those villagers," he said, "they were freed. But what about the others? The ones who never come back, the ones the town forgets?" Mara's eyes darkened. "Some memories aren't meant to be recovered. Some sacrifices are eternal." A sudden chill ran down Elijah's spine as the wind whispered through the trees, a haunting echo of the hollow's breath. "We have to leave this place," Mara said, urgency threading her voice. "Before the town wakes, before the root sends new tendrils to reclaim what was lost." Elijah hesitated, torn between the urge to escape and the drive to uncover every secret Ravencroft held. "And the woman in black?" he asked. "She warned us." What if there's more? Something deeper? Mara's jaw tightened. There's always more. Darkness feeds on silence. Before Elijah could respond, a soft tapping began beneath their feet, the familiar rhythmic knocking, faint but unmistakable. He looked down, his skin prickling. The root was still calling. Elijah clenched his fists. The silence has a price, and we've just begun to pay it. The tapping beneath their feet grew louder, more insistent, a heartbeat in the earth's bones. Elijah and Mara exchanged a glance, the unspoken dread hanging between them heavier than the mist. Every knock, Mara whispered, is a soul trying to speak, to be remembered. They descended again, away from the fragile light of dawn, returning to the hidden tunnels beneath Ravencroft, the veins of the hollow pulsing in the darkness. As they moved deeper, Elijah's vision still haunted by the mask's otherworldly perception. He saw faint, shimmering figures flickering like ghosts among the roots, echoes of those lost to the roots' hunger. Whispers floated around them, broken fragments of memories, laughter stifled, promises broken, names erased. Mara's voice broke through the murmur. They're trapped, between worlds, forgotten. A sudden shudder rippled through the tunnel walls, and Elijah stumbled into a cavern filled with old artifacts. Children's toys, worn books, yellowed photographs, all abandoned and decaying. He picked up a tattered doll, its face cracked, but eyes eerily lifelike. They were here, he said, voice heavy. They lived, they mattered. Mara nodded, eyes glassy. The hollow doesn't just consume flesh, it swallows stories, histories, erases existence. A cold breeze swept through the cavern, carrying with it a chorus of faint, desperate voices. Help us, remember us. Elijah's heart clenched. We have to make them visible again. Suddenly, the ground trembled, and from the shadows emerged a figure, a child, translucent and shimmering, eyes wide with fear and hope. I'm Leela, the ghost whispered. They forgot me. Elijah reached out, but his hand passed through her like mist. We're not alone here, Mara said urgently. The root's hunger has fractured reality. The echoes of the forgotten pressed closer, their voices intertwining into a mournful song that filled the cavern. Elijah realized that beneath Ravencroft, the past and present bled together, and only by embracing the memories could they hope to heal the hollow's wounds. The cavern grew colder as Elijah and Mara followed the shimmering figure of Leela deeper into the labyrinth of roots and forgotten memories. The air vibrated with whispers, snippets of lives once lived, joys shattered, and truths buried beneath layers of earth and silence. Lila's form flickered, her eyes bright with a desperate urgency. They're waiting, she said softly. The memory keepers. Elijah exchanged a wary glance with Mara. Who are they? They're the guardians, Leela explained, her voice a faint echo, not of the root, but of what the root tries to erase: the stories, the faces, the names. They preserve the forgotten, protect what the hollow tries to consume. As they rounded a bend, the tunnel opened into a vast chamber illuminated by a strange, ethereal glow emanating from hundreds of crystalline structures embedded in the walls. Each crystal pulsed gently, holding within it flickering images, faces, moments, whispers of the past. From the shadows emerged figures cloaked in tattered robes, their faces obscured, but their presence commanding. They moved with deliberate grace, hands tracing the crystals. Reverently, Mara stepped forward. We seek the truth of the hollow. We want to stop the cycle. One of the keepers raised a hand, and the air shimmered as a crystal detached, floating toward Elijah. Inside, a vivid memory played, a child laughing in a sunlit meadow, a mother's gentle touch, a family's love now lost to time. Every memory, the keeper intoned, is a battle against oblivion. To stop the hollow, you must remember not just the pain, but the lives it tried to steal. Elijah reached out, touching the crystal. Images flooded his mind, faces of the missing, moments of joy and sorrow, fragments of a life once vibrant and whole. A surge of determination filled him. Then we fight with memories. We make the forgotten impossible to erase. Leela smiled faintly. The root fears the remembered. Mara nodded. If the hollow feeds on silence, then our voices are its undoing. The keepers closed ranks, chanting softly a melodic incantation that filled the chamber with light and warmth. Elijah felt the power of history and memory weaving through him, a shield against the darkness looming beneath Ravencroft. But as the glow intensified, a new, deeper tremor shook the chamber, reminding them that the fight was far from over. The light from the memory keeper's crystals pulsed steadily, bathing the cavern in a warm, soothing glow. Yet beneath the surface, Elijah could feel the tension twisting tighter, as if the very walls held their breath before an inevitable storm. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed through the chamber. The air shivered. Mara's eyes snapped open, her body stiffening, the veil its breaking. Before Elijah could ask what she meant, the shimmering barrier that separated the world of the living from the shadow beneath fractured. A jagged rip tore through the cavern's edge, revealing a swirling maelstrom of darkness and whispers, a glimpse into the hollow's heart. From the tear, shadows poured forth, indistinct shapes, wailing voices, faces twisted in pain and rage. The memory keepers raised their hands, chanting louder, but the darkness surged forward, overwhelming the light. Elijah stumbled back as the swirling shadows engulfed part of the chamber. Through the chaos, a figure emerged, taller, more menacing than any before, the woman in black. Her veil torn, revealing a pale face etched with sorrow and rage. Her eyes black voids locked onto Elijah. "You cannot remember without pain," she whispered, voice echoing like a death knell. "And some truths will shatter what remains." Elijah's heart pounded. "Why are you here?" "To remind you," she said, stepping closer, "that beneath the hollow lies the cost. The price paid in blood, fear, and forgotten souls. Mara, step between them. We fight to heal, not to forget." The woman in black's lips curled into a bitter smile. "Healing demands sacrifice." With a wave of her hand, the shadows surged toward them. Elijah braced himself, feeling the mark flare bright against his skin, the mask pulsing with an eerie warmth. The veil between worlds was no longer intact, and the hollow's hunger had found a new path. The shadows recoiled only momentarily before surging back, swirling around Elijah and Mara like a storm of whispered fears. The woman in black's presence twisted the air itself, and the cavern trembled as if the hollow's very soul was awakening. Mara gritted her teeth. "It's not just the hollow we're fighting, it's the legacy that shackles us all." Elijah's gaze drifted to his marked arm. The burning symbol seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat. "What do you mean?" Mara's voice lowered, haunted. "The pact wasn't just a curse on the town, it's bound to blood. The founders sealed the root to their families. Their descendants carry the mark and the burden. It's why you were chosen." A sudden memory flashed in Elijah's mind, a childhood photo of his great-grandfather, standing before the Ravencroft town hall, an unsettling look in his eyes. "I never knew my family was from here," Elijah murmured. Mara shook her head. "Most don't. The root hides in plain sight, weaving its influence quietly. Those marked are its vessels, meant to feed, but also to serve." The woman in black's voice echoed from the shadows. "And blood binds deeper than roots. Betrayal and sacrifice carve the true price." Elijah clenched his fists, fighting a rising tide of despair. "Then we break the chain. We end it with us." Mara nodded slowly. "But breaking the curse means confronting our own family's sins, the buried secrets, the lies passed down like poison from the darkness." A chilling laughter echoed, a reminder that the hollow's reach was far beyond the tunnels below. The cavern walls seemed to close in as Elijah faced a terrifying truth. To save Ravencroft, he would have to unearth not only the town's horrors, but the darkest corners of his own bloodline. Elijah stood before the crumbling ruins of an old Ravencroft estate, the ancestral home of his great-grandfather, a man whose name was whispered with unease in town folklore. The once grand mansion was now little more than rotting wood and shattered glass, swallowed by creeping vines and the ever-present mist. Mara's footsteps crunching beside him were steady but tense. "This is where it started for your family, where the pact was sealed in blood." Elijah's heart pounded as he pushed open the heavy door, the scent of decay and forgotten memories rushing out to greet him. Inside, faded portraits lined the walls, faces staring blankly from cracked frames. A desk cluttered with yellowed papers and a single locked drawer caught his eye. With Mara's help, he forced the drawer open. Inside lay a journal, pages brittle and stained, written in a hurried hand. He began to read aloud. "October 30th, 1849 tonight. We pledged ourselves to the rote. The Hollow's hunger promised prosperity in exchange for our souls and those of our descendants. The ceremony was dark, the air thick with dread. Yet, the town must survive. I fear what we have unleashed. The journal detailed horrifying rites, secret meetings, and the gradual corruption of the family line descendants marked at birth, bound to serve the Root's insatiable appetite. A sudden noise echoed behind them, a floorboard creaking. Elijah spun around to see a shadow slip into the room, a figure cloaked in black, face obscured, but familiar, his own reflection twisted by the darkness. "You seek truth," the figure whispered, voice a distorted echo of Elijah's own. "But some legacies are curses, some sins unforgivable." Elijah's blood ran cold as the figure stepped closer, revealing a twisted grin. "Will you become the next vessel, or will you shatter the cycle?" The house seemed to pulse, alive with ancient malice. Elijah knew the choice was his, but the cost of breaking free might be more than he could bear. The air inside the crumbling manor was thick with tension, the shadows pressing close as Elijah faced the dark reflection of his own fate. The twisted figure smiled coldly, its eyes burning with the weight of generations enslaved to the Hollow's will. "You cannot escape the bloodline," it whispered. "It courses through your veins, calling you home." Elijah swallowed his fear and stepped forward. "I don't want to be a slave to the past. I want to end this." The reflection laughed, a harsh, hollow sound that echoed through the ruined halls. "To break the cycle, you must sacrifice more than you know." Mara appeared beside Elijah, her face resolute. "We have the Memory Keeper's light. The Root's power feeds on silence and fear. Together, we can sever the link." Elijah closed his eyes and gripped the mask tightly, feeling the pulse of the Root within him. The mark on his arm flared bright, illuminating the dark room. He chanted the words the Memory Keepers had taught him, a weaving of forgotten tongues and ancient names. The air crackled with energy as roots began to writhe from the floor, but this time they bent to Elijah's will. The dark reflection screamed in rage and began to dissolve, but not before whispering one final warning. "The Hollow never forgets, it waits." With a surge of light, the manor trembled as the curse's hold weakened. Outside, the first true rays of sunlight in centuries broke through the mist. Elijah and Mara stood together, battered but unbroken. The cycle was broken, but the scars would remain, and the Hollow's hunger was not yet satisfied. For days, Ravencroft basked in an uneasy calm. The mist receded, the townsfolk's eyes cleared, and whispers of a curse broken began to stir hope. Elijah and Mara moved cautiously, knowing the Hollow's silence was only temporary. But beneath the earth, the Root pulsed, wounded but alive. One night, as Elijah lay restless, a faint tapping began at his window, slow, deliberate, the same pattern that had haunted him since his arrival. He rose, heart pounding, and saw a dark figure standing just beyond the glass, the woman in black. Her eyes, voids of shadow, locked onto his. With a voice like a cold wind, she whispered, "The Hollow remembers, it will rise again, and with it, the darkness within." Before he could respond, she vanished into the night. Elijah's mark flared sharply, a burning reminder that the fight was far from over. Mara joined him, her face grim. "We delayed it, but the Root will return. It always does. We need to prepare," Elijah said, determination hardening his voice. "This time, we fight not just to survive, but to end it forever." Outside, the forest rustled with unseen movements. The Hollow was stirring once more. The air was thick with tension as Elijah and Mara stood at the edge of the forest, the horizon bleeding crimson under a dying sun. Ravencroft lay silent behind them, a town holding its breath before the final reckoning. From the earth beneath, a low rumble grew, roots twisting, pulsing with malevolent life, seeking to reclaim what had been torn away. The woman in black appeared one last time, her veil fluttering like shadowed wings. "This is the hour of reckoning, light and dark intertwined." Elijah tightened his grip on the mask, now glowing with a fierce inner fire. The mark on his arm blazed bright, a beacon of defiance against the encroaching darkness. Mara raised an ancient blade etched with glowing runes, a gift from the Memory Keepers. "We fight not just for Ravencroft, but for every soul the Hollow has stolen." Together, They stepped forward into the maw of the hollow roots, parting like a sea of black tentacles. The cavern trembled as the hollow's monstrous form emerged, an endless tangle of wood, earth, and whispered screams. Elijah's voice rang out, chanting the incantation of the memory keepers, weaving light into the darkness. The hollow writhed, howling in rage, but the roots began to burn, cracking and splintering. Marl lunged forward, the blade piercing the core of the hollow's heart. A blinding explosion of light erupted, shaking the very foundations of the earth. When the light faded, the hollow was gone. The tunnels began to collapse. But Elijah and Mara emerged into dawn's first true light, free. The curse was broken. The root was severed. Ravencroft's dark secrets lay buried, but its people would remember. And in the memory, find freedom, ***.